Welcome back. Joining me now is Republican Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma. Senator Lankford, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Glad to be back again.
It's wonderful to have you here. Thanks for being here in person. I know you're here. The Senate is in session, a rare weekend session as you try to reopen the government. Let me ask you the same question I just asked Leader Jeffries. How close do you think you all are to a deal?
Well, we have hoped that we've been close for a very long time. Just to be able to set the context of where we've been, this is 6 weeks of us doing the same thing that we've done every single time we reach this point during the Biden administration. Clearly, Republicans had differences of opinion with President Biden, but we worked to be able to keep the government open. So we brought a continuing resolution, which is just keep status quo, keep it open while we continue to negotiate, and Democrats determined they want to be able to close the government down. This shutdown is not about health care. This shutdown was really about Democrats saying they want to show their resistance to President Trump. They want to show they're fighting. They want to be able to energize their base. They use terms like this helps the Democrat brand. I've heard, the focus has really been on we want to show we're fighting Trump because their base says you're not fighting hard enough, so they're fighting hard enough. The problem is people are getting hurt in this. People are not getting on flights. They can't get SNAP benefits. There's real pain across the country while they're showing we're fighting Trump.
Given that real pain, do you think the government will reopen by Thanksgiving?
Oh, yes.
I do,
and it absolutely needs to. It needs to be open today if we can get it open. So we put out a proposal literally 14 times to say, let's open it today. Let's keep negotiating. And on the health care issue, it's been fascinating. President Trump came out within the first week and said, if you want to talk about health care, we'll talk about health care as soon as the government is open. Vice President Vance came forward. We'll talk about health care as soon as the government's open. We're not going to negotiate while the government's shut down, which is the exact same position we've been in and Democrats were in before during a shutdown when Republicans closed down the government.
Speaking of health care, President Trump is out with a proposal on health care. It would eliminate Obamacare and send money directly to people to buy their own health care. My question for you, Senator, do you support President Trump's plan to eliminate Obamacare and send money directly to the people?
Well, his statement wasn't to eliminate Obamacare. His statement was very clear. It was, why are we sending money to insurance companies? Right now, the Democrat proposal they put out, with Chuck Schumer put out this past week, was let's continue to send billions of dollars to insurance companies and hope insurance companies will bring down premiums. That's not worked. That's not worked for years now. You go back to Obamacare when it was first released, it's going to bring down rates 25%. Can anyone tell me that their rates have gone down 25% anywhere in this? And so the president's proposal was pretty straightforward. Stop sending money just to insurance companies, hope it gets better. Give Americans freedom of choice. If we're going to allow subsidies to get out there, get them to people, not to insurance companies.
You're saying something really interesting. I want to make sure I understand. Is the Republican proposal not to repeal Obamacare, which has been the long-held position?
Yeah, right now, Obamacare is health care in America. What Democrats did 15 years ago was they radically changed all health care in America. They moved all physicians under hospitals. They changed all the reimbursement programs. They shifted everything in. So it is health care in America. So the challenge is what we have now has to be fixed. The Democrat proposal that even came out this past week from Chuck Schumer was, okay, let's just do a one-year extension of the subsidies. And he continues to talk about the Obamacare subsidies. It's not the Obamacare subsidies that they're actually proposing. It is a plus-up that was done during COVID that President Biden put out there. So it's on top of the subsidies that are there, and it's only for about 20 million people. That's a big group, but the other 320 million Americans are still saying, hey, our health care is skyrocketing as well. Democrats are targeting that group of 20 million people when our rates are going up as well. What we're trying to do is to say, why aren't we talking about all health care for all Americans rather than targeting 20 million people and saying we're going to help them?
To this point, though, that President Trump wants to send money directly to all people, your colleague, Democratic Senator Chris Murphy, had this to say on X. He wrote, this is unsurprisingly nonsensical. Is he suggesting eliminating health insurance and giving people a few $1,000s instead? And then when they get a cancer diagnosis, they just go bankrupt? Senator, how does the president's plan to lower health care costs and support people with pre-existing conditions?
Yeah, that's not what the proposal is. And I'm sure Senator Murphy knows that. It makes for good politics, but that's not what it really is, and he knows it. The challenge that we have right now is that this has become a political fight when people are really being hurt. There is a real focus on affordability of health care, but it's for all Americans. What we're saying is, isn't it better for Americans to have their own choice, their own opportunity to be able to look at plans they want to look at? We still want to protect pre-existing conditions. We still want to have the opportunity for people to get insurance of all different types out there. Of course we do. This is not about wiping out all insurance. This is about giving people choice and opportunity. Right now, Obamacare says, no, we're going to choose for you from the federal government exactly what your plan has to look like and choose the plans. And we watch plans skyrocket across the country. We just think there's a better way to do it.
You know, Senator, it's worth noting that 80% of these subsidies are actually going to help people who live in states that President Trump did win back in 2024, including 300,000 who live in Oklahoma.
In my state.
Yes.
Right.
Should those 300,000 Oklahomans be prepared for their subsidies to skyrocket or to potentially lose coverage?
Yeah, we're trying to find a way to be able to help. But again, remember, this is not the Obamacare subsidies. This is on top of the Obamacare subsidy. This is the bonus COVID plan that Democrats put in place in 2021 that they had expiring this year because they literally said this is a COVID plus up during the healthcare emergency. What we're saying is if we're going to get back into healthcare again, why are we talking about $40 billion just for that group? I've got 300,000 Oklahomans that are receiving those subsidies, but I've got 4 million Oklahomans total that are struggling under the high cost of health insurance. What are we doing for that?
I think the question for Republicans right now, why wait 10 months to start talking about these alternatives? Why not propose something, vote on something? The first or second month that President Trump took office, was that a failure to address a critical issue?
No, we have quite a few issues that we've been dealing with already. You think about what happened this past July with what we did in tax changes, what we did in health care. And I know my Democratic colleagues continue to attack us. And they play the politics game on this to say they hate people, they want all hospitals are closed. It's ridiculous. Of course we don't. We're human beings as well. We actually see the challenges there. For instance, we put $50 billion towards rural health care in our plan this past summer because in that bill, we want to make sure we're strengthening rural hospitals. That's one of the weakest areas in our healthcare delivery right now because they don't have the patient count, but they still have the high cost. So we added $50 billion. We did what we could to be able to strengthen the proposals there.
That $50,000, though, that you mentioned was because $50 billion rather was because there were deep cuts to Medicaid that would have impacted those rural hospitals. But let me ask you, because President Trump is calling for getting rid of the filibuster, which, of course, requires 60 votes to pass legislation in the Senate. You've come out and you've said you are opposed to that. So let me just be very clear. Do you rule out ever voting for any bill that would include getting rid of the filibuster?
Yeah, we should not get rid of the filibuster. The filibuster has been a core in the United States Senate since the early 1800s. Now, there's been different forms of it over the year. The current form that we're living under was actually done in 1975. But what's unique about the filibuster and about the United States Senate, it's the only place in our government where both sides have to talk to each other. That's a good thing for America. This is the place where the grown-ups need to sit down and to be able to have hard conversations and say, we have differences of opinion. Let's work our differences out. It's the same thing that's going to happen in churches today. That's the same thing that happens in workplaces and neighborhoods and communities where people who have difference of opinion work it out. In the House of Representatives, it's majority only. In the Supreme Court, majority only. In the executive branch, majority only. The Senate forces both sides to talk to each other. I think that's good for the country.
I do want to ask you about the people who are suffering right now. You have talked about this SNAP, the food assistance program. Roughly 42 million people, Senator, rely on this. It ran out of funds on November 1st. The Trump administration has fought this all the way up to the Supreme Court to not fully fund this critical food assistance program. What do you say to the allegations made by many Democrats that the Trump administration is simply weaponizing hunger?
Yeah, this is the spin. Literally, this is the painful spin that people across the country is like, I'm so sick of the politics and the spin. Just fix the problem with this. 14 times we voted to reopen the government. 2 weeks ago, we brought a bill that would fully fund SNAP for the entire year. Last week, we brought a bill that would just pay our federal employees. Democrats have voted no, 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 no every single time because the goal for them is leverage. If you listen to the things they say over and over again, they say people are suffering, but that gives us more leverage in our debate here. Listen, people don't want leverage. They want to get access to food. And I would only say President Trump diverted tariff revenue into the WIC funding, Women, Infants, and Children's funding, to be able to make sure that program stays solid. The problem with SNAP is you would have to take funds away from the disaster aid that's there if we have a hurricane that comes in, or take it away from the school lunch program. So it's this terrible choice the president has to make. Take it away from the school lunch program or deal with SNAP. He said over and over, just open the government. That's the solution.
And yet the Trump administration did say in court, told the court that it does have billions of dollars. The billions needed to cover SNAP, they say it exists in reserve funds. So shouldn't the administration find a way to fund SNAP and make sure that people are not going hungry, politics aside?
Sure, the politics aside, absolutely. The billions of dollars are literally taking out of the school lunch program to be able to do that. And so that's the question of, yes, there are billions of dollars, but it's set aside for that. So we don't know how long Democrats are going to hold out at this point. As you just heard from Hakeem Jeffries, they don't know if it's going to keep going, if they're going to hold out or just stop negotiating at whatever point. So we've got to make sure school lunch program's still there. If we have a hurricane, we got to make sure a disaster rate is still there. We're in a really difficult time on this. The president's been moving around funds, try to pay the troops, try to do whatever he can. But at some point, you've got to just open the government.
Finally, I do want to ask you about this controversy in the Republican Party right now over anti-Semitism. Yeah. It started after former Fox News anchor Tucker Carlson hosted a podcast with Nick Fuentes. A lot of people thought it was a very chummy, friendly podcast. Fuentes is a white nationalist. Yep. He has expressed admiration for Adolf Hitler. As the co-chair of the Senate Bipartisan Task Force for Combating Anti-Semitism, do you believe there is room in the Republican Party for Nick Fuentes or anyone who shares his ideology?
No, I don't. That's not a conservative ideology at all. That's a hateful rhetoric that's inconsistent with even the United States Constitution, not just inconsistent with the Republican Party. So no, that's not who we are. The Republican Party and conservatism has stood up for decades and decades for all individuals. If you want to trace back our lineage, it goes all the way back to George Washington, George Washington in 1790, writing to what he called the children of the stock of Abraham, that they would live in peace with the people around them. They would live under their own vine, their own fig tree, and not be afraid. From the beginning of our country, we have welcomed every faith in this country, but we have absolutely strongly opposed anti-Semitism and should continue to be able to do that and make it clear.
All right. Well, clearly something you're very passionate about. Thank you so much for being here, Senator Lankford.
Glad to be here.
Really appreciate it.